Hello everyone. Today we will be discussing about the double entry bookkeeping and the T account. So, let's start. What is the double entry system? The double entry system of accounting means that for every business transaction, amounts must be recorded in a minimum of two accounts. The double entry system also requires that for all transactions, the amounts entered as debits must be equal to the amounts entered as credits. Simply put, when we say double entry system, every business transaction should have a corresponding debit and credit account of the same amount. Now, let's have an example. The owner invested cash in the company. The investment of the owner of cash affects asset and equity. The cash is an asset and the capital invested is an equity. Therefore, there are two accounts affected by the transaction. Asset is on the debit side and equity is recorded on the credit side. For the next example, the company purchased a machinery. So there are two asset accounts affected by this transaction. First is the machinery and second is the cash. Since you purchased a machinery, therefore your machinery account had increased. And since you purchased using your cash account decreased. Therefore, the increase in your asset account is recorded on the debit side and the decrease of cash is recorded on the credit side. There should always be debit and credit of the same amount for every transaction. Now, recording transactions in a double entry system. We use something known as the T account, which looks like this. The account name on the upper portion, the debit on the left side, and the credit on the right side. It is T account simply because it looks like a letter T. Now, what is debit or DR? Debit is a formal accounting term that comes from the Latin word debere, which means to owe. Debit increases assets, decreases liabilities, and owner's equity. It is always on the left side of the T account. Debit is always found on the left side of the T account. Debit is affected with increase in asset and decrease in liability or owner's equity. Now, what about credit? It is what the account gains. Credit decreases assets, increases liabilities, and owner's equity. Credit actually decreases, credit actually is actually used if there's a decrease in asset and if there's an increase in liabilities and owner's equity. It is always on the right side of the T account. Recording transaction in the T account. Now the rule for recording asset accounts, assets increase on the left or the debit side, because normal asset balance is found on the debit side. Now, decrease of asset is recorded on the credit side. Normal balance of asset is found on the debit side. Therefore, balance should be found on the left side of the T account. Left side, which is the debit side. Now, rules for recording liabilities and equity. Increase is recorded on the credit side. Decrease is recorded on the left side. And balance should be normally on the right side or the credit side, because liabilities and equity's normal balance should be found on the credit side. So if there's an increase in liabilities, for example, accounts payable, notes payable, payroll liabilities, it should be recorded on the credit side. Now, if there is a decrease in your accounts payable or your equity account, it should be recorded on the left side. And remember that the normal balance should always be found on the credit side or on the right side of the T account. Debit and credit procedures. In double entry system, again, each transaction must affect two or more accounts to keep the basic accounting equation in balance. Recording should be done by debiting at least one account and crediting another. Debits must always equals credit. So, when you record a transaction, there should always be at least, take note, at least one account and one debit account and one credit account. It is at least one. Therefore, you can have more than one account for a single transaction. But remember that all transactions entered in the T account should have an equal debit and credit balance. Okay? If credits are greater than debits, the account will have credit balance. For example, in your transaction 1, you recorded a debit of 15,000, then another transaction, a credit of 8,000, and another transaction, a credit of 11,500. Therefore, 8,000 plus 11,500, that is 19,500, less 15,000 is equal to 4,500. If you notice, the credit side has greater amount than debit side. Therefore, the balance should be shown on the credit side. If credits are greater than debits, the account will have a credit balance. On the other hand, if debits are greater than credits, the account will have a debit balance. So for this example, if for instance, your debit showed 30,000 and your credit showed 19,500, your balance should be shown on the left side or on the debit side in the amount of 10,500. Now, debit and credit procedures for revenue. Normal balance for revenue accounts is on the credit side. So, an increase in revenue is recorded on the right side of the T account, and decrease in revenue is recorded on the debit side or on the left side of the T account. normal balance of revenue, again, is on the credit side. For expenses, normal balance of expense is on the debit side, and therefore an increase in expense should be recorded on the debit side, and a decrease in expense account should be recorded on the credit side. Now, to summarize, we have here the account types. We have here the assets, the expenses, the dividend, the losses, the liabilities, the capital, the revenue and gains. Now, the normal balances are shown here. Asset has normal balance of debit and increased in assets should be in the debit side, decreased should be in the credit side. Same with expenses, dividend and losses. If you notice, normally asset, expenses, dividend and losses have the same normal balances, which is on the debit side, and increase in those accounts is recorded on the debit side, and decrease of such accounts is recorded on the credit side. Now, liabilities, capital, revenue, and gains have the same normal balance, which is on the credit side, and an increase on those accounts is recorded on the credit side, and a decrease is recorded on the debit side. Okay? Now, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you do like and subscribe this video, and I'm hoping to see you again on my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, everyone.